Jason Robb. I'm the Seek and Find coordinator at the Southeast Kansas Library System. I've presented at these conferences multiple times. I'm no expert on UX, bugs, or etc. So I hope that makes you feel comfortable also not being an expert on those things with me and diving in and doing some stuff. This is going to be sort of like similar to Juliet's presentation a little bit. I'm going to go through some things that I've changed, but also tying in Bugzilla and the bug process to those things. I did put in the obligatory map slide because we always get the questions about regional library systems in Kansas. So I am from the southeast part of the state. George is at the northeast part of the state. We also have Nikki here from the northeast part of the state. Our newest Koha consortium in Kansas is NORCAT, and Amber's here fighting. And then we have another system consortium, system administrative consortium in CKLS, the Pathfinder Central. Down in South Central, the Derby Public Library also has a small Koha consortium. So Koha is very deep in Kansas blood. Also, I have the lines around the state because the statewide library card authentication system is using Koha as well. So we're excited that we're extending our reach in Kansas with Koha.
Almost there.
Almost there. Just got to get that western part of the state. We are all regional systems, but we are all very different. So in the way that we're managed and that sort of thing. So maybe someday we'll get the West picked up, maybe not. We do also have like standalone libraries out. Like I've got a community college using Koha that's not in our consortium. So there's also those scattered about the state. But that has nothing to do with UX, bugs, etc. So let's move on to the presentation. So I couldn't resist and I did put let's talk about UX at the top of this slide. User experience design it's a big process where you're looking at the whole of a thing and you're looking at making it better. Like how are people using something? In web design, that's a website. Koha is just a big giant website, right? So you can apply web design principles when you're thinking about Koha. Now, I should back up and say, we as users don't have a lot of control over the user experience design outside of making our voices heard in bugs and whatnot. But when we're doing things like Juliet was showing us, paying attention to bootstrap classes and picking things that are within the theme of Koha goes a long way to maintain a consistency and a better experience for whatever users you are customizing for. I like just to make the golf analogy when I'm talking about user experience because it really is click golf. If it takes me 10 clicks to get to a report, that's a lot of time wasted. Whereas if I can put a link on the homepage directly to the report I need, that's one click. That saves so much time. So just thinking about that sort of stuff when you're customizing and when we're looking at how Koha works. User interface so you'll hear UX and UI together a lot. So user interfaces design is a subset of user experience design, which talks about specifically things like buttons and what are people interacting with when you're on a website. But yeah, I feel like we've all been to the internet for a while now. We've been around. We know how a website should feel and look. So that's UX design in the background that's pushed all that stuff. Again, not an expert, but Kelly is over there. I see her nodding. So that's satisfaction and enough for me. So yeah, the search bar is going to be in a certain place. And if there's a list, you can sort of suss out that's links, that sort of stuff, that sort of feel. So when you're working with designing and customizing a website or Koha, you want to think about your audience. So Koha is sort of interesting because there's a duality there. We've got the staff user that has different needs than the patron. And your patron might be using the OPAC, the vanilla OPAC like we do. They might be using a discovery layer like Aspen. We have the kids OPAC plugin set up, so that's a different consideration when you're designing. But they're all different, but all the same. So those two sharks, one could be a staff user and one could be a patron. Like they're still human beings. So they're still both expecting sort of a similar experience. Who's familiar with universal design? Got a couple hands raised. So this is the idea that, and this goes outside of web design, just like to the larger thing. But the idea that when you're making something for someone, it should be good for everyone. So like if I, as an example, wanted to make sure that my OPAC was colorblind friendly. So I'm going in and picking a right color template so that like I'm not gonna like give those people a poor experience. That's making it better for everyone. So just the thought that like you design in a way that is equitable. So I've got the principles listed out there. It's equitable, so like anybody can come and use it, whether they have to use a screen reader or like I said, they're colorblind, whatnot. If they have to use a keyboard because they can't use a mouse, just thinking of things like that. So just quickly, the 7 principles of universal design are equitable, flexible, simple, and intuitive. So I feel like Koha does really well in the intuitive sector. Like we train librarians of all skill levels. At our little small libraries, we'll often get retirees that maybe aren't as good with computers, and they pick it up just as fast as the younger people because Koha is just so like, it is well designed. It is like things are in the places you'd expect. The perceptible information, so like you should be able to get the vibe, like I said. Tolerance for error, low physical effort, which that doesn't come into play so much in a website, I guess, if you're like giving them carpal tunnel from having to swipe across the screen maybe. And then size, space, approach, use. So some of those things are more of like a physical realm type design, but a lot of it can come back into your web design.
I have a question. What's tolerance for error?
You know, I was racking my brain about that as I was.
Is that like?
Oh, sure.
I don't know, confused with somebody else.
So the question was, what does tolerance for error mean? So I think that one's probably coming back into the more physical realm as well. So like, even though you've set up your shelves at ADA, maybe there's a little wiggle room, I guess. I can follow up with that. Just to go over a few design elements, things to think about more specifically. So typography, if you are picking a font that's outside of like Koha. So again, like Juliet was saying, like you want to use Koha's themes and stuff. If you pulled in the sans serif heading in your staff interface, it's going to look weird. But in general, the themes are there for you, so use them. But if you're doing something outside, so this is again like general design knowledge, you can use a serif font for print materials that reads better, sans serif font. So I've got the little diagrams up there. Serifs are the little doohickeys on the ends of your letters. Sans serif fonts read better on screens. Text should cleanly scale. This one's an important one for Koha. So if you're doing something in the OPAC and you've done something custom, you want to make sure that when you look at it on the mobile side of things, it's scaling right. Otherwise, you're putting people out. Like if it shrinks really small with the responsiveness of it, then that's a problem. As far as colors and contrast, again, colorblind friendly palettes are good for everyone, just so that you're not leaving anybody out. High contrast is important as well. So you want that black on white, not that gray on gray, wherever possible. And colors should not be the only indicator of functionality. So this is one where, like, if you do maybe let's say you're doing a news post on the OPAC and you decide you want to put a hyperlink on one of the words, if color is the only thing that designates that as a hyperlink, and you haven't been paying attention to the colorblind palettes, those people aren't going to realize that it's a link. So like inline text, especially, you want to underline or something like that. But for lists and stuff, like I said earlier, if it's a bulleted list in the footer or something, people are going to recognize those are links that I can click. So you don't have to worry about decorating them as much. And then just a few more design elements. So hierarchy kind of defines importance and flow of information. Again, I think Koha is really great with the hierarchical way it's designed in the staff client, where you've got like the search box is big across the top. So that's where you go first. And then it's sort of on the homepage, it sort of sections out to news on the left and then buttons on the right. Balance, not so much on like websites, but more on print materials. For scale, this kind of conflicts with balance. So if you want to make more drama in your designs, you can scale things different sizes, and that also puts emphasis on the bigger things and less of emphasis on the smaller things. But if you want a more balanced, harmonious design, you can go with a more symmetrical look. I did steal this, all this stuff from a presentation I did on using Canva, which is why it's like more print focused than website focused, but I thought it would be helpful information to share with you guys. So texture isn't coming into play in Koha. That's why I preface that. And transparency probably isn't much either unless you're trying to do something fancy, stacking elements. White space is important. So the absence of space in your designs helps put in emphasis on the things that are on the page, and it adds interest. And then alignment, just a note on that. You can left align, that means it's like a starting point. You can center align, that puts emphasis on the text, and you can right align, which means it's like not as important. I wanted to take just a moment to talk about accessibility. So there is a category in Bugzilla for accessibility. So if you find issues where a screen reader isn't working as well as it should be in Koha, you can file a bug for that. If you've got patrons especially that are using your OPAC, and it's hard because you can download software and stuff to test this out yourself, but you're really not going to run into it until you run into that patron that needs to use it and then tells you, hey, something's wrong here. So just being a champion on your patron's behalf for like making Koha more accessible is great. So again, we go back to the information hierarchy for screen readers. So if it's not doing like a heading and then the body, or you're not using a list in the right places, it's going to make that screen reader harder. It's going to make it harder for the screen reader to understand what's on the page and translate that to the patron. So also putting alt text on images is always important. They can't see the image, so you want to describe it in some way if it's important. If it's not, there's a way to like de-emphasize it so the screen reader doesn't see it at all. You want to make sure your link text is clear as well. So additional considerations. So think about, is your OPAC or staff client even able to be completely navigable by keyboard, no mouse? So we haven't had any situations where a staff member needs that accommodation, but so I haven't tested the staff client, but we did make some extra adjustments to some of our customizations in the OPAC. So I've got that big old mega menu, for example, on the front page of my OPAC that breaks down new items. It wasn't at all accessible when I first developed it. So I went in and added some jQuery to make sure that keyboard navigation would work in that menu so that someone that doesn't have access, can't use a mouse, is still able to access that part of our website. For verbiage, make sure it's brief, make sure it's not complex. especially for patrons, but even for staff members. Like nobody wants to read a wall of text to figure something out. It needs to be like clear and concise, and they know what they're doing when they're pushing that button, or when you're creating training documentation, that sort of thing. Writing a book is great, but writing a bulleted list or a numbered list is much better. And then use clean, simple layouts. Blank space does matter, as I mentioned before. Cramming everything together makes it hard to read. It puts everything on the same level. Okay, so that's it for my my spiel on user experience. So now we can talk about bugs. I'm gonna ask the same question that came up yesterday. How many people here have a Bugzilla account? Okay, so I'd say the majority. So for those of you that didn't raise your hand, you should get one. It's great. It's the best thing. So like, I've been using Koha forever. We were with PTFS LibLine before we went to Bywater. And yeah, I like opening tickets. I like doing things myself too, though. So if I can go out to Bugzilla myself, I find something that's messed up and I can go to Bugzilla and find it on Bugzilla and read through it, that's enough confirmation for me to be able to communicate to my member libraries that, hey, somebody noticed this, they're looking at it, it'll get fixed eventually. I can also open a ticket if it's really major with Bywater and tell them, hey, my people are complaining. But often I find it easier to just do it myself. I'm a DIYer as well, which is why I've been attending the baby devs more. I'm trying to do better about not just working in my own little cone and reporting bugs and enhancement requests for things I'm making. So I've got some of those to look at in a minute. I do have links in all these slides for different things. So again, Bugzilla is great because you can sort of you can advocate for yourself. The developers love to hear from librarians. So if it's something that's really bugging you, your voice matters there. For bug reporting, so I want to talk about bug reporting a little bit later on, but I put a link to the guidelines here, which I find really helpful because I always get confused about, do I need to report the issue or the fix? And there was a standard declaration of I should report the issue, and I always have to go back and reference that. Because sometimes I've reported bugs and I'm like, this should do this, and it isn't. We'll look at that. And then discussion avenues. So mailing lists are a great place to bring up something if you're not sure. We've got so many. There's the community mailing list, there's the koha-US mailing list, there's a mailing list for every single SIG. So I struggle with getting intimidated. I've been doing this since 2013, and I still struggle with sending a list email to the global list because that's just my personality. They're not scary people. They won't bite you. You can do it. But it's much easier for me to go to my local communities first. So if I can go to a SIG and talk about a problem or a bug, or a koha-US meeting and talk about a bug, that's much more approachable for me. So if you get intimidated like me, I would encourage you to start in those smaller communities, and then we can help bring things up to the light. If you're not comfortable putting in a bug yourself, we can do it together in a meeting. Mattermost is great as well. There's lots of channels in there. Highly recommend that. Okay, so fun Jason fact. When I was in high school, I was in FFA because that's what you do when you're a kid in Kansas. It paid for part of my college, so I appreciate it. I placed 6th at state entomology. My brother placed 2nd, but we don't talk about that. I also had to do agronomy and food science that year, so I was split. I think that's why I have such ADHD, because my teachers would always split me 3 different ways. definitely not blaming myself. So I want to talk about bugs versus enhancements in the context of entomology. So there are different orders of insects, and a lot of people call everything bugs. You guys call them bugs. There is a true order for bugs, and it's the Hemiptera. So my slides so far have had true bugs. Those are real bugs. Hemiptera meaning like it's a shield shape on the back. See? So the assassin bug, the stink bug, the squash bug. And then all the other things you call bugs are insects, and they live in different orders and families and whatnot. So like a butterfly is not a bug. It's also not a fly. That's Diptera. It's Lepidoptera. So I'm thinking about bugs in that sort of lens. So bugs and bugzilla can be two different things. Like they're all bugs, or technically insects. But the bugs that are problems are hemipteras. They're stink bugs. The bugs that are enhancements, they're pretty. We want to see them, but they're not actually a thing you have to fix. They're a thing you have to add. Those are butterflies. So those are called enhancements. And then I can find a life cycle of a stink bug, so I use the butterfly because it's cooler looking anyways. But this is an abbreviated life cycle of a bug in the development process. So the bug is first reported, a fix is written, the fix is tested and signed off, the fix is QA'd, the fix is pushed to main, and then sometimes the fix gets backported depending on how severe, if it's possible, if it's doable. There's a big old asterisk because this is abbreviated. At any point in this process, something could go wrong. So maybe you test it and you can't sign off on it, or you test it and the patch doesn't apply, or it gets to QA and they don't like what you did, so it gets pushed back and has to go through another cycle. I did put a link to the full development workflow from the wiki, and there's a nice chart that sort of goes through all those if then what's situations. So on to some of the things that I've reported or copied myself on. So I'm bad. I do a lot of Band-Aids with jQuery, and then I don't open bugs. And that's been a problem for years for me. So I've been trying to make a conscious effort of, if I've run into something, if I make a change, and it's not just some local customization, which I'll show you some of those too. I'll open a bug about it and if it makes sense, I'll share what I've done to sort of Band-Aid on it. So that's what we're looking at first. So the first one, we recently started using the point of sale system, which works great. My libraries are loving it, but there were a few things that we wanted to tweak. One thing with the point of sale system is it has inline editing on the data tables. So like if you add an item to the sale and then you want to sell 5 of them, you have to click on that number 1 and change it to a 5. But it's not wildly obvious that you can do that. There's a little line of text at the top of the table that everybody just looks past that says you can click on the cells to change things. So I just added a little low contrast pencil there in front of the number. So that could probably be a little higher contrast for my people that can't see very well. And then I filed a bug about it, and Owen came back on that bug and gave another suggestion of a way to make it look better. Blinking the home library field on self-registration. So we ran into this a lot where my first library in the list was Altamont, and Altamont would get a flood of self-registrations every day because the top thing in the dropdown was Altamont. So I took pity on her and I blanked that out with some jQuery. That one is a little iffy because if you blank it out and you don't require the field, then you get a 500 error. For another point of sale bug, so the reports and point of sale are great as well, the built-ins, but my libraries wanted one that would do a different sort of summary for the day. So it will actually group together. We took in $5 for copies, $10 for donations, whatnot. So I wrote a custom report that made them happy, but I didn't want them to have to go digging for it in our reports because I'm up to like 900 reports. So it's a mess to get through. So I put in just a link. I added a link to that navigation menu on the left with the other reports to get to that report directly. Another trick there is you can like program in your jQuery the branch code of the logged in library, so they don't have to actually hit run on the report either. They can just click the link and it goes straight through. This one, I guess I didn't do that because they have to pick a date, but we do pre-fill the home library on the report dropdown to make it less clicks, which is the goal. I haven't filed a bug on this one yet, just because, you know, I'll get there. My thought on this one, I haven't like formed the idea, but I think it would be cool if in the HTML customizations, we could go in and say, I want to add a link to the nav menu for this module, because every module has its own different left bar. So for point of sale, there would be like, you pick point of sale and then you pick nav menu and then you can add links or something. That seems like the logical way to do that. The next one is adding context to pages in the staff client. So how many people have like used the custom pages tool in Koha? A few. Have you noticed that the left bar when on your page is always going to be the tools nav menu? It's kind of weird. So from a user experience standpoint, like if my page is about reports, I don't want them clicking into tools using that nav bar. So one of the things I did, this screenshot's really small and hard to sort of suss out what's going on here, but this is a custom page that I created for cleanup reports. And so I just swapped out that left nav menu with a hand-built little like abbreviated version of the one you see in the reports module, which again, so the larger bug there is adding context to pages. So like when you add a page to the staff client, it'd be nice if you could pick which module that sits under, and then it gets the right breadcrumbs and it gets the right nav bar on the left. Okay, another one that I did that my libraries really enjoy. So I hear a lot of people say they don't use the holds queue. We love the holds queue. So I got like 3 things on here about the holds queue. But one of the things that my libraries really appreciate, because we have lots of large libraries. We don't have lots of large libraries. We have like 3 mid-sized libraries and a bunch of small libraries, really. So oftentimes my little libraries aren't getting a lot on their holds queues just because we use the transport cost matrix to prioritize holds so that the larger libraries are taking the burden. They have the staff, they have the collection, it makes sense. But it's a lot of effort for a little library to go pull up the holds queue, run the holds queue just to see that there's nothing there. So one thing that saves them a bunch of clicks is having that number right there posted on the link. So if there's 4 holds on the holds queue, they can see that immediately. And it also is an indicator to them that they need to run it, because sometimes they get in the habit of not, because they are so small and they don't often have things. So that one is using some jQuery to run a report on the holds queue to ask how many things are on the holds queue, and then bringing that back onto the button. I found an ancient bug, 9573. I think this mic died. Are you guys still hearing me okay? Okay. So 9573 is adding the series information to the holds queue. So most of these things are requests I get from my library. So then I just like take it and run, and I'm like, I can jQuery that, that's fine. So this one is using the API to look at the bib and then go out and pull the series information and then put it into the publication details portion of the holds queue. This one was requested by a library who shelves their books by series, but doesn't put that in the call number or anywhere. So they needed a way on the holds queue to know that it was part of a series, and they needed to look in a different place than where the regular shelves are sitting. This is my favorite. Okay, so this one builds the holds queue for a specific library without having to click 3 buttons. And this is my plug for baby devs because this is what we worked on in baby devs. It's sitting in signed off right now. So this is the patch that I wrote within baby devs to try and help make that more usable. So yeah, if anybody wants to QA this plug, that'd be great. That's my plug. Okay, and then I want to talk about local customization. So I don't know, like some of the stuff I do doesn't make sense as a bug, but maybe it does, and then I get caught in this like cycle. So maybe you guys can tell me. On this one, we've moved the action center from down below those nav links on the homepage to up the upper left, because I feel like the hierarchy and flow of that page is we want those action things, items taken care of first. So that needs to be like top left. That needs more priority than being under all of the nav links on the right. But it works fine on down below too, and that's where it was designed. So I could put in a bug and suggest, hey, maybe move it up there because it makes more sense from a psychological perspective, I guess. I did do some other stuff to this menu as well. So we are a consortium, and some of those links will list out like all libraries, your library. So I just sort of parsed it down. So again, brevity of information, clarity of information is going to help our people get to what they need to get to faster. Some more local customization. So we enforce reciprocity for new items. So if I have a library that doesn't want to share their new items, then they're not allowed to borrow new items. And we needed a way to communicate that with staff members and with the patrons at the time of placing the hold. So I added these little tooltips that just say, hey, this library doesn't share the new items. It may be a while if you put a hold on this. It's going to take a while to get it. I also have some probably not totally push verbiage on the OPAC. It's not bad, but it basically, if a patron tries to place a hold, it pops up a notice that says like, hey, your library doesn't like to share the new items. So maybe talk about that with them if you want this item in the future. We have very few. This is the origins of the sharks and the fishes, by the way. We call our immediate sharing library sharks and our delayed sharing libraries fishes. And we have, I think, maybe 4 fishes left out of our 53 libraries. So we are sort of moving away from that through attrition. Another thing that, so we talked about making links for reports. Another thing that's really handy is the reports templates, which I presented on last year. Building links to those, because it is a lot of clicks to like run a report, pull the data, and then run the template, and then do something. So as an example, for our kits, we have a large circulating collection of kits that we send out to libraries and daycares to use for early literacy and like skill building and stuff. So for those kits, we always want to like print out a page with the barcode on it to stick in the tub. So I created a report template for that, but then my catalogers were like, but I have to go do this to this to get to that. And so I just added a button. If it has that item type of SCKLS kit, that button will show up, and when you click it, it'll run the report for that item, so that then they can just hit print and they get their sheet. This is a messy screenshot. And if Heather Hernandez were here, she'd probably like clutch her pearls at this notion. So from the get-go, we didn't really like how series were displaying in search results and in the details page. And I had, for a long time, used XSLT modifications to make it work how we wanted to, which is don't recommend. I don't know. So it's a pain. That language is not fun to learn. So then the whole API thing came up where I could query marked fields with the API using jQuery, and that's like much better. I do recommend that. Lucas has a blog post about it somewhere. So that's what we're doing to adjust this. So the sort of the larger thing is standard. The series name is going to include the author's name if it's traced to the 800 fields. We wanted it to just be the series name, and we wanted to make that consistent. So when you click on that series, it's bringing back everything. So I just sort of broke what it does so that it would just do a series search on the title instead of the title with the author. That gets us more search results, but sometimes that's better because our cataloging is never perfect. Okay, now I did plan a time permitting live demo. I'm done it. How much time do I have?
26 minutes.
20, I guess time is permitting. Let me get my laptop. Okay. So advantages of dealing with the Zoom and stream is I have access to the Zoom. So I'm going to share my screen over here. And hopefully I closed enough windows that I'm not revealing any dark secrets.
Well, you are helping now.
Oh, you'd know. Okay, so again, I've been bad. I've been sitting on this bug for a couple of weeks because I wanted to use it during my presentation. So, so I was going to go through the process of submitting a bug just to get you guys more comfortable with that. It's not a scary thing, and I would, again, encourage everybody to get a Bugzilla account. It's okay if you put in a duplicate bug. Somebody's going to find it and merge it. It's okay if you put in a bug that doesn't need to be there. They're going to like come back and tell you it doesn't need to be there. But my favorite thing about Bugzilla is it tells you when things have been updated. So like I put in a bug, somebody puts in a fix, I get an email that says that was fixed. Okay, so the bug in question is showing up okay. If again, the holds queue, it's because you guys aren't using the holds queue. That's why you didn't see this, I'm sure. If I go to the holds queue, we can play a little game here. It's on the screen.
You mean the thing that you want to change is on the screen?
The thing that I want to change is the thing that is wrong. It's very wrong. It should stick out, but it doesn't.
You have author in your publication.
Yes. So the author, the little filter field here has the wrong placeholder. Yeah. Yeah.
Here, you win a prize.
Oh,
Okay, so yeah, what she said was we have author in the publication field. So that little placeholder text is wrong in that column. So so step one, you find a bug, there's something wrong, it needs fixed. I spun up my testing Docker. You can do this, like you find a bug in your current system on your current version, you can report it under that version. But what I like to do is go either to a sandbox or just spin up a copy of main just to make sure that it's not been fixed already. Which I know that sounds scary, but if you want to learn how to do that, come to Baby Devs because it's awesome and we learn how to do that. But you can always go to the Bywater sandboxes or Biblieve or whatever is working that day and spin up a sandbox, and that's going to be the freshest copy of koha to look at. So step one, we found a bug. This is going to be like a super simple bug, I assume. It's just going to be like changing the placeholder text. So we'll see how fast it goes. Step two, I'm going to search for Bugzilla through Bugzilla to see if it's already been reported. So my strategy in Bugzilla is to use my librarian knowledge of drilling down. So I like to do a search that is very broad And then I like to just do a control F within that search to try and like look through the bug list and see if I can find anything that comes to like to the surface. So I know that that element, like if I go back and inspect that, I know that that element is called the text filter, and I know that the place it's a placeholder that needs changed. So those are sort of some of the key terms that I want to look at. So like, is there a bug about maybe filter? So that says filter, but that's not what I'm looking at, and that's it. So maybe I'll look for placeholder and spell it right. I got a 3 in there somehow. Okay. So there's no place. The 3 is silent, yes. Placeholder's not there. So I'm feeling pretty good that maybe this bug hasn't been filed yet. But again, no big deal if it has. Somebody's going to come along and say that's a duplicate if I'm filing a duplicate bug. So next step, I am already logged into Bugzilla. So I'm going to go to new. I'm going to go to Koha. And then I have to pick my component. So sometimes it's like a toss up, like this is circulation, but there's a holds request section. So I think I'll put it in there because it is related to the holds queue. That makes sense to me. Again, if I pick the wrong thing here, somebody's going to come back and say, hey, this needs sorted into somewhere else. Back to my butterflies and my sync bugs. This is going to be a bug, not an enhancement or feature, because it is something that is wrong. It's not something that I want to add to the code to make it better. It's something that needs fixed. So I always just mark them trivial because I don't feel like I hold enough weight to make anything important, but someone else can always come along and be like, hey, that's major. This needs fixed faster. The next step is to enter a summary, and this goes back to those bug reporting guidelines. It's helpful to go back to those. So let me pull that link up. So this is a nice page to go to if you're getting into reporting bugs. And it's sort of walking through the same steps that we're talking about here. So like search, see if you can find a bug. If you do find a bug for it already, you can copy yourself on it so that you're getting updates on it. And that also, when you copy it, it sends emails to anybody involved so that then it kind of comes back up to the surface. Okay, so I selected my component, my version, severity. So the summary section is what I go to often to sort of figure out, am I doing it right? So it should quickly identify the bug you're reporting, and it should explain the problem, not your suggested solution. That's the part that used to hang me up, and that's why I go back here. So the problem is, go back over here, the placeholder text in the filter row for publication detail on the queue is incorrect. That's probably too many words, but it's pretty descriptive, and no one like that deals with this, Nick, is yelling at me, so I'm gonna keep going. And then in the comment, I'm just gonna say the placeholder text in the filter row for publication details on the holds queue. Oop, hit tab. Says author instead of publication details. That's what I would expect it to say. If I were reporting a bug that took a few steps to do, I would then write out those steps. I find that that is much more, you're going to get a faster response if you can tell whoever needs to fix it how to replicate it. For this one, all they have to do is go to the holds queue and run it. I didn't even have to like have anything on the holds queue to see the problem. So I'll just put in here maybe to replicate run the holds queue. Also, I skipped this section, but this one is gonna tell you, it's gonna do sort of the secondary search for us. So like maybe I didn't find it in my search that it was a bug, but as I start typing, it's trying to guess at bugs that are in the system already to see if there's one in there already. Okay, so that's all I have to do. Again, if I mess something up, I'm not gonna get fired from reporting this bug because nobody's paying me. Okay. And somehow they're, okay, yeah, yep, so there it is. So you can see at the top, emails got sent to Moss, Lizette, and Galen, because they're the ones that sort of oversee this part of the Bugzilla. So that was reporting a bug. Super easy, right? Now, if you wanted to do like I do and put a Band-Aid on it, we can fumble through that process real fast. So like this situation, I've been ignoring it because it's not major at all, and nobody has even reported it to me from my libraries. I just saw it one day and I'm like, that looks weird. But if it were something more pressing, I would want to maybe put something in place to like make it more useful for my people in the meantime. So if I wanted to write some jQuery, I'm going to look at the elements that are involved with the inspector, and then I'm going to go over to my sysprof. This is way easier on a big screen with the mouse, just so you know. Okay, so I'm going to go to my internet user.js intranet, and oh, I need like a document ready thingy. I'm just gonna do, you guys can see my process is very refined. Okay, so I need this. I need to wrap my jQuery and document ready. That's telling it, hey, when the page is loaded and ready, do a thing. So then I'm gonna say, I want to do the thing. So I wanna do the thing on this parentheses. And I know it's a placeholder, which is an attribute. So I'm going to change the attribute from one thing to another thing. And now I have to figure out all the things. So I need that window back. You know, I put on that slide what could go wrong. So you had fair warning. Okay, so we're gonna look at these elements and see. First thing I'm gonna look at is what page is it on. I wanna limit to that page. So I'm getting the ID from the body of that page. Otherwise, the change I'm making could affect other places of Koha, which I don't want. I want it to just be fixed on this page. So that was an ID, so it gets a hashtag. And then from there, I'm looking at these classes. So I only want to affect this column, which is the pub details. So I'm going to add that. That's a class. So it gets a dot. I don't make the rules. These are just the rules. And then I want to target this text filter class because this row is text filters. Also a class, so I'm gonna say text filter. And then looking back over here, like I said, it's an attribute. I know that because the colors and the way they are. So like class is an attribute, type is an attribute, placeholder is an attribute. So I'm changing the attribute of the placeholder attribute to something other than author. So the first placeholder is all lowercase, yeah. So the first little thingy gets placeholder, and then the second little thingy gets what I wanted to say. So I'm going to say publication details. And now we're going to see if it works. Now it says publication details. So the thing that I've been trying to make myself do more is when I do something like that, I'm going to, like often before I report the bug, I've put the Band-Aid on it. So when I report the bug, I'll also put something like, I'm using this jQuery to get around the issue until it gets fixed, and put that in the comments. So like if you guys come across the bug, you want the jQuery that I'm using to alleviate the fix, you can, it's right there in the bug. So you don't have to dig for it in a jQuery library or something. So that's etc. We got to the etc. part of my presentation. I think that's all I've got for you guys. Let me pull up my presentation again. Maybe.
Yeah. No, you. I'm trying to work with our microphones, so we can maybe ask some questions, but this is the microphone that didn't work when Jason started. So maybe power cycling can solve the problem. George is gonna tell me shortly. After all the people in the stream tell him. Does anybody have questions for Jason? I started walking to you while we solve the mystery of the microphone.
So I did put
I
a,
hear you online. The microphone works.
okay, it was just the me effect, I guess. I did put a QR code to these slides if you want them, because there were a bunch of links in it. And then the handout I made for my Canva training is up there that has some like interesting graphic designing tools. It was largely copied off of Canva stuff, but there's also like a color psychology thing on the second page that's sort of interesting.
I'm handing the microphone to George for online comments.
Well, first off, this is George. There is a comment from Tomas says, nice talk.
Thank you.
Sounds of St. Elsewhere. I don't know who that is. They say tolerance for error, the design minimizes hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. So that, I guess it was Nate or Nick.
That was Nate, yeah.
Tolerance for error. The example, so that sounds of St. Elsewhere's comment. My example of tolerance for error is the USB-A plug versus the USB-C plug. The USB-A plug has a low tolerance for error. You can plug it in one way. If you turn it upside down, it doesn't work. USB-C has a higher tolerance for error. It doesn't matter if it's upside, there is no right way up. So it has a higher tolerance for error. That's the example I can think of tolerance for error.
Forgot password button.
Yeah, the forgot password links,
Yeah,
making that.
yeah, that gives you an opportunity to,
If you make a mistake, you have a way out, a way to fix it.
yeah.
Undo buttons, yeah.
In my house, a big part of universal design, my mother-in-law moved in with us, and there were a lot of things when she moved in with us that she couldn't do. My mother-in-law is, well, she'll be 87 this year. She has really bad arthritis and she can't open a round doorknob. So we switched all the doorknobs in our house to be ones like this one here, where it's the paddle handle. Universal design isn't just, Jason mentioned, it isn't just websites, but it's, anybody can use the paddle handle. Even people without hands often can use the paddle handle. But a doorknob, my mother-in-law was really restricted by that. So we upgraded our house to a more universal design. So a lot of things like that you see universal design talking about.
Yeah.
Then there were some other comments. Mark Gerald wanted to know what baby devs was. So we explained that to him online.
Okay.
That's what day do you guys meet?
We meet on Thursdays. Our next meeting was supposed to be next week, but I believe that's getting rescheduled because Bywater's out and we need Lizette. She's the driving force behind that one. So watch the listservs. If you're interested, we have a Google group. You can join on the listed on the koha-US website, and that's the best way to keep in touch.
And then there's a question here. How should staff members go about requesting UX changes for their branch from their consortium system administrator? And then he goes on, any recommendations for dealing with system admins that are particularly obstinate to change. Probably another thing that sounds you're saying elsewhere is, we don't know who that is exactly.
I would say like, yeah, I understand where your system administrator is coming from because the path I'm on leads to burnout where you're just saying yes to everybody about everything and like just fixing things as you go. But if you can build your case and like wireframes and screenshots and diagrams are really, really helpful, like explaining exactly what you want and not just being vague about what you want. That's what I want from my people when they're asking me to fix something. It's really frustrating when they just send me like a one sentence thing that says this bug doesn't work or this button doesn't work or something like that. And I'm like, just a few more pieces of information, I might be able to fix that for you. So having complete information and an idea of what you want, that's well communicated. That's my suggestion, but I mean, people are people and sometimes you just have to deal with people being people. You could also put in a bug for that, like request a bug and then have someone else do it, and then it becomes part of the main code and everybody gets your great idea.
Christopher Brannon says he's happy he's got his fill of sharks for the year. And then there's a comment here from Juliet, who's in this room, so that must be.
I just did the same thing that Nathan just said.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Barbara says great presentation, so that's all for online comments.
Last check for in the room questions. George has one left.
No, that's Brad.
Yeah, sorry. Guys, that's easily expanding confusion.
Well, this isn't really a question so much as a comment. In troubleshooting and figuring out what the problem is. Which other folks who call it the reference here, but you know, I always feel kind of strange when someone says, okay, this isn't working. I have to say, okay, how is it not working? But it really is a legitimate question.
No, and I think that analogy is great. I mean, we can pull our library and stuff into a lot of what we do. So like I talked about drilling down in Bugzilla to search, the reference interview is exactly what we have to do as sysadmins with our member libraries to pull out the information we need to fix the problems.
Well, they haven't applied for them. To give you as someone who comes in and asks for a book about bugs, what they really want to know is book about the reproductive habits of the pygmy ants of Krakatoa. Be safe with fun.
Wally from Robb library. Quick question, when all of these changes that you're making and such, and this even goes to Juliet's presentation a little bit. When you make them and we get upgrades, do they stick and stay, or how do you keep track of it?
Yeah, no. So what you have to be careful of, you do have to test, like, it's a problem and it's part of my problem is why, and it's why I've started putting in more bugs when I do something, because I would love to see the stuff that the changes I'm making go into the base code. That way I don't have to babysit them. But a lot of the time, people like Andrew will put classes in places where classes weren't, or change class names, and then your code breaks because it can't see what you're trying to affect anymore, which is good. It's like I remember we talked about something you did recently that I was like, yes, I want that, but then I was like, oh, I gotta look at my jQuery and see if it breaks. So my strategy is always we have a test server. It's on the next version of Koha right now because upgrades are coming. So my strategy is just to go into the test server and look through and make sure nothing's majorly broken. I don't have time to like pick through every line of my code. So oftentimes it comes around to upgrade time, and then my people will tell me, hey, this isn't working right, and we'll go in and fix it at that point. If I had more hands in my department, maybe I could be more thorough, but at this point, it's sort of a reactive, not proactive thing for me.
Again, sort of a question for Steve at Ocean State Library. We had at the table a contents to the top of our jQuery maps. And that's helpful for just keeping track of what's in there and everything.
Yeah, I can share mine too. My strategy is to categorize it out by module, so I don't have it pulled up. I'm gonna stop the share just real fast so you don't see me type my passwords because that's not secure. I guess I am over on time a little. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, Jason's eating your figurative break right now.
Nom.
Selling that was terrible.
I'll let you guys have extra time to, I don't know what, it's not cookies, so I mean, what's the point? But during the web dev SIG, if you come to that, you guys can have extra time to eat whatever's over there that you would have had on break.
While Jason's looking that up, this is George again. What I'll say is that I try to document everything that I write in jQuery and in CSS. You can put comments in there that aren't read by the system preference. And I try, when I write jQuery, I try to include the breadcrumbs for the page that it's affecting. So that when I look at my jQuery, I can go, oh, this is good. I know exactly which page that piece of code is supposed to work on.
So this is my big old mess, but yeah, I've done like big commented blocks. So I've got functions at the top that do stuff. If I scroll down a little more, I've got some global variables set. So I use those in a lot of different code. And then stuff that affects all places of Koha goes at the very top. And then I parse it down by like, this is what's happening in the login screen. And that's helpful because if I can search it. So like if I want to see my holds queue stuff, I can sort of get there faster with some control F-ing around. And I have started doing what George does as well. So like, if you put just the end of the URL on there, I can get to the holds queue even faster because I know it ends in view holds queue.pl. So it's still a mess, but it's a little bit more organized. I do like the idea of a table of contents. I might steal that. And I do put in bug numbers as well in my code and comments. So like, for example, I talked about adding series to the holds queue. I put that bug number in there so that I can keep track of it if it ever gets pushed and fixed, then I know I can take that chunk of jQuery out.
And I'll mention again that Lizette is working on snippetizing. That's a word. Snippetizing this syspref so that instead of one long document, it's a bunch of individual chunks, and you can label each chunk and say this chunk does this and this chunk does that. So really making it inherently structurally do kind of what Jason's done there, which will be nice.
Yes, looking forward to that. All right, good.